Chapter 1. The Body in the Bathtub. February 11th, 2012, 3:55 p.m. The Beverly Hilton Hotel, Beverly Hills, California. Room 434. Whitney Houston's assistant, Mary Jones, knocked on the bathroom door. Whitney had been in there for over an hour, getting ready for Clive Davis's pre-Grammy party that night. "Whitney, you okay in there?" No answer. Mary knocked again, harder. "Whitney." Still nothing. Mary opened the door, and what she saw would haunt her forever. Whitney Houston, the woman with the greatest voice in pop music history, was lying face down in the bathtub, submerged in scalding hot water, her face under the surface, motionless. Mary screamed. She tried to lift Whitney out, but the body was too heavy, too slippery. She ran out, calling for help. Hotel security rushed in. They pulled Whitney out of the tub, laid her on the bathroom floor, started CPR. But it was too late. Whitney Elizabeth Houston, 48 years old, was dead. The water in the tub was still hot, 93.5 degrees. Whitney's skin was burned, her face swollen and discolored. On the bathroom counter, pill bottles, Xanax, ibuprofen, Benadryl, and traces of a white powder on a spoon. The official cause of death would be listed as accidental drowning. But that wasn't the whole truth, because Whitney Houston didn't just drown. She'd been drowning for 20 years, drowning in drugs, in a toxic marriage, in the prison of fame, in the expectations of being the voice. And that day, in that bathtub, the drowning finally became literal. Now I'm going to tell you the real story of Whitney Houston, not the glamorous diva you saw on stage, but the broken woman behind the smile, the girl from Newark who was destroyed by the industry, by her husband, by her family, and ultimately by herself. This is the story of how the greatest voice of a generation was silenced, not by age, not by illness, but by crack cocaine, prescription pills, and the crushing weight of being perfect. Chapter 2. The Girl from the Gospel Choir. Building the Voice, August 9th, 1963. Newark, New Jersey. Whitney Elizabeth Houston was born into music royalty. Her mother, Cissy Houston, was a gospel singer who'd sung backup for Aretha Franklin and Elvis Presley. Her cousin was Dionne Warwick, a massive star. Her godmother was Aretha Franklin herself. Whitney grew up surrounded by music. The house was always filled with singing, rehearsals, and recording sessions. Gospel music, soul, R&B, it was in the air she breathed. But Whitney's childhood wasn't idyllic. Her parents, Cissy and John Houston, had a volatile marriage. John was a city official and former military man, controlling, intimidating, and rumored to be violent. Cissy was strong-willed, but distant. She was always working, always singing, always gone. Whitney craved her mother's attention, but rarely got it. Whitney had two older brothers, Michael and Gary. Michael was Cissy's favorite, talented, charming, golden. Gary struggled with drugs and eventually died of AIDS-related complications. Whitney was the baby, the afterthought. She learned early that singing got her mother's attention. When Whitney sang, Cissy noticed her, praised her, loved her, so Whitney sang. At age 11, Whitney had her first solo at New Hope Baptist Church in Newark. She sang a gospel hymn, and when she opened her mouth, the church fell silent. That voice, pure, powerful, effortless, came from somewhere beyond her years. It wasn't learned. It was a gift, a miracle. Cissy heard it and immediately started training Whitney, not gently. Cissy was a perfectionist, demanding, critical. "Again," Cissy would say. "That note was flat. Do it again." Whitney would sing the same line 10, 20, 30 times until Cissy was satisfied. "Good isn't good enough," Cissy would tell her. "You have to be perfect. Always perfect." That pressure, be perfect, don't make mistakes, never disappoint, would define Whitney's entire life. By her teenage years, Whitney was singing backup for her mother at nightclubs. She was tall, strikingly beautiful, with big eyes and a radiant smile. People couldn't take their eyes off her, and when she sang, they couldn't believe what they were hearing. This teenager had the voice of a seasoned gospel singer, rich, controlled, with a range that went from deep lows to soaring highs. In 1977, at age 14, Whitney was discovered by a photographer at a nightclub. He thought she should model. Within months, Whitney was one of the first black models to appear on the cover of 17 magazine. Modeling brought money, fame, attention, but Whitney didn't love it. She loved singing, and she was about to meet the man who would make her the biggest star in the world and control every aspect of her life. Chapter 3. Clive Davis, The Making of a Superstar, 1983. Clive Davis, the legendary music executive, was at a nightclub in Manhattan. He was there to see another artist, but then Whitney Houston walked on stage. She sang one song. That's all it took. Clive was mesmerized. "I've never heard a voice like that," he told his colleagues. "She's going to be the biggest star in the world." Clive signed Whitney to Arista Records immediately. He had a vision. Make Whitney a crossover superstar. Not just R&B, not just gospel, pop, mainstream, the whole world. But first, he had to shape her, control her, create her. Clive chose every song, every producer, every outfit, every interview answer. Whitney wasn't an artist to Clive. She was a product, and he was packaging her for maximum commercial success. In 1985, Whitney's debut album, Whitney Houston, was released. The singles, Saving All My Love for You, How Will I Know, Greatest Love of All. The album was a phenomenon. It sold 25 million copies worldwide. Whitney became the first artist to have 7 consecutive number 1 hits. She was 22 years old and already the biggest star in music. But success came with conditions. Clive insisted Whitney stay clean, wholesome, the girl next door, America's sweetheart. She couldn't curse in interviews, couldn't dress too provocatively, couldn't date anyone controversial, couldn't be herself, and she definitely couldn't be seen as too black. This created a backlash in the black community. At the 1989 Soul Train Music Awards, Whitney was booed. Audience members shouted, "Sell out," and "Oreo." Whitney was devastated. She'd grown up in the black church. Gospel music was in her soul. But now, she was being accused of abandoning her roots for pop success. Years later, Whitney would say, "I paid a price. The black community turned on me. It hurt. It really hurt." But the worst was yet to come. Because in 1989, Whitney met Bobby Brown. Chapter 4. Bobby Brown, The Beginning of the End. Bobby Brown was everything Whitney wasn't. Wild, reckless, street, a bad boy. Bobby had been a member of New Edition, then went solo and became an R&B star with hits like My Prerogative and Every Little Step. But Bobby was also trouble. He had arrests for DUIs, drug possession and assault. He partied hard, drank hard, lived hard. When Whitney met Bobby at the 1989 Soul Train Awards, she was immediately attracted to him. Because Bobby represented freedom, rebellion, everything Clive Davis and her mother wouldn't let her be. They started dating secretly. Cissy was horrified. "He's going to destroy you," she warned. Clive Davis was furious. "This is bad for your image," he told Whitney. "He's not right for you." But Whitney didn't care. For the first time in her life, she was making her own choice. She was in love. Bobby made her feel alive, real, not like a product, not like The Voice, just like Whitney. In 1991, Whitney performed The Star-Spangled Banner at Super Bowl XLV. It's considered the greatest national anthem performance ever. Her voice soared, powerful, and perfect. America fell in love with Whitney all over again. She was at the peak of her powers, unstoppable. But behind the scenes, things were falling apart. Whitney and Bobby were using drugs together, marijuana at first. then cocaine. Bobbi introduced Whitney to it, and she loved it. It made her relax, made her forget the pressure, made her forget she had to be perfect. On July 18, 1992, Whitney and Bobbi got married. It was a lavish ceremony. Whitney wore a $40,000 gown. The reception cost over $1 million. But the marriage was doomed from the start. Bobbi was controlling, jealous, possessive. If Whitney talked to another man, Bobbi would explode. He'd accuse her of cheating, scream at her, sometimes worse. And Whitney, for all her fame and power, was submissive to Bobbi. She'd been raised to obey, to please, to avoid conflict. So she took the abuse, and she numbed the pain with drugs. Chapter 5. The Bodyguard. Peak fame. Hidden addiction. November 1992. The Bodyguard was released. Whitney's first major film role, starring opposite Kevin Costner. The movie was a massive hit. It grossed over $400 million worldwide, and the soundtrack became the best-selling soundtrack of all time. The lead single, a cover of Dolly Parton's "I Will Always Love You," became Whitney's signature song. It stayed at number 1 for 14 weeks, sold over 20 million copies. That performance, Whitney's voice building from a whisper to a powerhouse belt, is considered one of the greatest vocal performances ever recorded. Whitney was at the absolute peak of her fame. She won Grammys. She sold out stadiums. She was the biggest star on the planet. But she was also secretly falling apart. Behind closed doors, Whitney and Bobbi's fights were escalating. He'd hit her. She'd hit him back. They'd trash hotel rooms. The police were called multiple times. And the drugs were getting worse. Cocaine wasn't enough anymore. Bobbi introduced Whitney to crack cocaine. Crack was different. Crack was instant euphoria. Crack made everything else disappear. The pressure, the expectations, the pain. Whitney started smoking crack regularly. At first, just on weekends. Then weekdays. Then every day. She'd lock herself in the bathroom and smoke. Or in the closet. Or in her car. Anywhere she could hide. Her team knew, her family knew, Clive Davis knew, but nobody stopped her, because Whitney was making too much money. As long as she could still perform, as long as she could still sing, they looked the other way. But crack was destroying her voice. The smoke damaged her vocal cords. Her range started to shrink. Her control started slipping. By the mid-1990s, Whitney was cancelling shows, missing rehearsals, showing up late to interviews, clearly high. In 1996, she gave a disastrous performance at the BET Awards. Her voice cracked. She forgot lyrics. She looked gaunt and exhausted. The media started whispering, "What's wrong with Whitney?" But Whitney denied everything. "I'm fine," she'd say. "Just tired." Chapter 6. Bobbi Kristina, the daughter in the crossfire. March 4th, 1993. Whitney gave birth to her only child, Bobbi Kristina Brown. Whitney was overjoyed. She'd always wanted to be a mother. She wanted to give her daughter the love and attention she'd never gotten from Cissy. But being a mother while battling addiction is almost impossible. Bobbi Kristina grew up in chaos. Her parents fought constantly, screaming, throwing things, violence. Whitney would disappear for days, locked in a room, smoking crack. Bobbi would be gone, partying, cheating. Bobbi Kristina was raised by nannies, by her grandmother Cissy, by anyone but her parents. And she saw things no child should see. Drugs, paraphernalia. Her mother passed out, her father arrested. Whitney tried. She really did. When she was sober, she was a loving mother. She'd hug Bobbi Kristina, sing to her, tell her she loved her. But then the addiction would take over, and Whitney would vanish into herself. By the late 1990s, Whitney's career was in decline. Her albums weren't selling as well. Her voice was deteriorating. The media was turning on her. In 1999, airport security found marijuana in Whitney's luggage. She didn't get charged, but the incident made headlines. In 2000, Whitney failed to show up to perform at the Academy Awards. No explanation. She just didn't come. Clive Davis was furious. "You're destroying your legacy," he told her. "You need help." But Whitney wasn't ready to hear it. In 2002, Whitney did an interview with Diane Sawyer. It became infamous. Diane asked about the drug rumors. Whitney got defensive. "Crack is cheap. I make too much money to ever smoke crack. Let's get that straight. Crack is whack." But then she admitted, "I have done drugs. I've done marijuana. I've done cocaine. But I'm not an addict. I can stop whenever I want." The interview was painful to watch. Whitney looked thin, erratic, in denial. America realized Whitney Houston is a drug addict. Chapter 7. The Reality Show, Exposing the Nightmare, 2005. Bobby Brown's career was dead. He needed money, so he pitched a reality show, Being Bobby Brown. The show would follow Bobby and Whitney's daily life. Bravo picked it up. Whitney initially resisted. "I don't want cameras in my house," she said. But Bobby convinced her. "It'll show people we're normal, a real family." The show premiered in June 2005. It was a disaster for Whitney's image. America watched Bobby treat Whitney like garbage. He was crude, disrespectful, controlling. He belched, farted, made vulgar jokes, and Whitney was submissive, laughing at his jokes, defending him, looking lost. In one infamous scene, Bobby talked about having to help Whitney when she was constipated. The humiliation was complete. The show was supposed to rehabilitate their images. Instead, it confirmed what everyone suspected. Whitney's life was a mess. After one season, Whitney demanded the show be cancelled. "I will not be humiliated like this anymore," she said. But the damage was done. America had seen behind the curtain, and what they saw was tragic. Chapter 8. The Separation, Choosing Survival. September 2006. After 14 years of marriage, Whitney filed for divorce from Bobby Brown. It wasn't an easy decision. Despite everything, the abuse, the drugs, the chaos, Whitney loved Bobby. Or maybe she was just used to him. But her family had intervened. Cissy, her brothers, her friends, they all told her, "If you stay with Bobby, you're going to die." And Whitney knew they were right. The divorce was finalized in April 2007. Whitney got custody of Bobbi Kristina. Bobby got visitation rights. For the first time in years, Whitney was free. But freedom was terrifying, because now she had no one to blame, no one to hide behind. She had to face herself. And what she saw in the mirror was a 43-year-old woman who destroyed one of the greatest talents in music history. Her voice was shot, her reputation ruined, her money dwindling. She'd been robbed blind by managers and hangers-on. She was nearly broke, but she was alive, and she wanted to stay that way. Whitney checked into rehab. She stayed for 3 months, got clean, started therapy. For the first time since her early 20s, Whitney was sober, and she remembered what it felt like to be herself. She started singing again, not professionally, just at home, in church, rediscovering the joy she'd lost. In 2009, Whitney released a comeback album, I Look to You. It debuted at #1. Critics praised her vulnerability, her honesty. Her voice wasn't what it used to be. The power was gone, the range diminished. But there was something new. Emotion, pain, truth. Whitney gave interviews. She was open about her addiction. "I hit rock bottom," she admitted, "but I climbed back up, and I'm grateful to be alive." America forgave her. Fans were excited. Whitney Houston was back. But the comeback was fragile, because Whitney was still struggling. Chapter 9. The Relapse, The Demon's Return, 2010-2011. Whitney was working on new music, touring, doing interviews, trying to rebuild her career. But behind the scenes, she was slipping. The pressure was back, the expectations. Everyone wanted the old Whitney, the powerful voice, the perfection. But that Whitney was gone. And the new Whitney wasn't enough for them. So she started using again. Just a little. Just to take the edge off. Prescription pills at first. Xanax for anxiety. Ambien for sleep. Painkillers for her back. Years of performing had wrecked her body. Then alcohol. Wine with dinner. Then vodka. Then all day. Then cocaine. Just once in a while. Then more often. By late 2011, Whitney was using heavily again. She tried to hide it, but people close to her knew. Her performances became erratic. She'd forget lyrics. Her voice would crack. She'd look disoriented on stage. In February 2012, Whitney was scheduled to perform at Clive Davis's pre-Grammy party at the Beverly Hilton. It was a big deal, a chance to remind the industry she still mattered. Whitney arrived in Los Angeles a few days early. She stayed at the Beverly Hilton in room 434. Her daughter, Bobbi Kristina, came with her. So did her assistant, Mary Jones, and her hairstylist, Raffles Van Exel. But Whitney was in bad shape. She was using, drinking, not sleeping, paranoid. On February 9th, 2 days before her death, Whitney went to a club. She was drinking heavily, dancing erratically. People recorded her on their phones. The videos were embarrassing. Whitney looked out of control. The next day, February 10th, Whitney rehearsed for the Clive Davis party. Her voice was shot. She could barely hit the notes. The rehearsal was a disaster. That night, Whitney stayed in her room. She drank, she smoked, she took pills. She called her mother. "I love you, Mommy," she said. Cissy later said Whitney's voice sounded strange, slurred, wrong. "Are you okay?" Cissy asked. "I'm fine," Whitney said. "I'll see you soon." It was the last time they spoke. Chapter 10, February 11th, 2012, the final hours. February 11th, 2012, Saturday, the day of Clive Davis's party. Whitney woke up late, around noon. She'd been up all night. She was exhausted, high, disoriented. She ordered room service, ate a little, then told her assistant she was going to take a bath and get ready for the party. Around 2 p.m., Whitney went into the bathroom. She started running water for a bath. Hot water, very hot. She took pills, Xanax, Benadryl, to relax, to calm her nerves. She got into the tub. The water was scalding, but she didn't care. She laid back, closed her eyes, and then something happened. Maybe she fell asleep. Maybe she had a heart arrhythmia. Years of cocaine use had damaged her heart. Maybe she lost consciousness from the pills. We'll never know exactly. But at some point, Whitney Houston slipped under the water, face down, and drowned. The coroner estimated she'd been in the water for about an hour before she was found. When Mary Jones discovered her at 3:55 p.m., Whitney was already gone. Paramedics arrived at 4:05 p.m. They performed CPR, but it was hopeless. At 4:11 p.m., Whitney Houston was pronounced dead. Chapter 11. The autopsy, the truth in the water. The toxicology report told the full story. Cocaine in her system, she'd used within 24-48 hours of death. Marijuana, Xanax, anti-anxiety medication, Benadryl, likely to help sleep or combat cocaine effects, Flexeril, muscle relaxant, alcohol traces. The official cause of death, accidental drowning. But cocaine use and heart disease were contributing factors. The coroner's report stated, the effects of atherosclerotic heart disease and cocaine use were contributory causes of death. In plain English, Whitney's cocaine-damaged heart likely caused an arrhythmia or unconsciousness while she was in the bathtub. She slipped under the water and drowned. It wasn't suicide, but it wasn't quite an accident either. It was the inevitable result of decades of drug abuse. Whitney Houston's body was ravaged. The autopsy revealed 60% blockage in her heart's arteries from years of cocaine use, chronic emphysema from smoking crack, scarring on her vocal cords from drug abuse and overuse, evidence of old injuries from physical abuse. Her body was 48 years old, but it looked 70. Chapter 12. The Funeral. Saying Goodbye. February 18, 2012. New Hope Baptist Church, Newark, New Jersey. The same church where Whitney had sung her first solo as a child. The funeral was massive. Celebrities, music executives, fans. Stevie Wonder, Alicia Keys, R. Kelly performed. Kevin Costner gave a moving eulogy, talking about making The Bodyguard with Whitney. He cried as he spoke. Cissy Houston sat in the front row, stoic, holding Bobbi Kristina. Her daughter, her baby, was gone. Bobby Brown showed up late. He was asked to leave after causing a scene. He was escorted out. Whitney was buried at Fairview Cemetery in Westfield, New Jersey, next to her father John, who died in 2003. The world mourned. Tributes poured in. Radio stations played her music non-stop. But the tragedy wasn't over. Chapter 13. Bobbi Kristina. History. Repeating Bobbi. Kristina Brown was 18 when her mother died. She was devastated. Whitney was her whole world. After the funeral, Bobbi Kristina spiraled. She started using drugs heavily. Cocaine, pills, heroin. She began dating Nick Gordon, a man Whitney had informally adopted as a teenager. He and Bobbi Kristina grew up together like siblings. But after Whitney's death, they became romantic partners. The relationship was toxic. They fought constantly. Nick was controlling, possibly abusive, and he got Bobbi Kristina deeper into drugs. On January 31st, 2015, almost 3 years to the day after Whitney's death, Bobbi Kristina was found face down in a bathtub at her home in Georgia. Unconscious, not breathing, just like her mother. She was rushed to the hospital, put in a medically induced coma, but her brain had been deprived of oxygen for too long. On July 26, 2015, after 6 months in a coma, Bobbi Kristina died. She was 22 years old. The official cause, lobar pneumonia. But the underlying cause was drug intoxication and drowning. Nick Gordon was found legally responsible for her death in a wrongful death lawsuit. He died in 2020 from a heroin overdose at age 30. Whitney's only child was gone, killed by the same demons that killed her mother. The Houston family was destroyed. Chapter 14. The Legacy, the voice that changed music. Whitney Houston sold over 200 million records worldwide. She won 6 Grammys, 22 American Music Awards, 2 Emmys. She holds the record for most consecutive #1 hits, 7. I Will Always Love You is one of the best-selling singles of all time. She opened doors for black female artists. Before Whitney, black singers were pigeonholed as R&B or soul. Whitney proved a black woman could dominate pop music. Mariah Carey, Beyoncé, Alicia Keys, Jennifer Hudson, they all cite Whitney as an influence. But Whitney's legacy is complicated because she's also a cautionary tale, a warning about the pressure of perfection, the dangers of fame at a young age, toxic relationships, addiction, the music industry's exploitation, family dysfunction. Whitney had everything: talent, beauty, success, wealth, but she also had trauma, pain, and addiction. And in the end, the addiction won. Chapter 15. The Unanswered Questions. Questions still linger about Whitney's death. Was she alone when she died? Officially, yes. But some witnesses claim they heard voices in the room. Was someone there who left before calling for help? Why was the door locked from the inside? If Whitney had a heart attack or passed out, how did the door get locked? Or was it already locked when she went in? Where did the cocaine come from? Whitney had been clean for months, supposedly. Who gave her drugs? Was it someone in her entourage? Could she have been saved? If someone had checked on her earlier, could they have pulled her out in time? We'll never know. Epilogue. The girl who just wanted to sing Whitney Houston was 11 years old when she sang her first solo at New Hope Baptist Church. She sang because she loved it, because it made her feel close to God, because it was pure joy. Somewhere between that church and the bathtub at the Beverly Hilton, Whitney lost that joy. She became the voice, the product, the brand, the diva, the addict. But she was never just allowed to be Whitney. In one of her final interviews, Whitney was asked, "What do you want people to remember about you?" She thought for a moment, then smiled sadly. "I just wanted to sing," she said. "That's all I ever wanted to do." Whitney Houston had the greatest voice of her generation, maybe of any generation. But she died alone in a bathtub, her voice destroyed, her life in ruins. She was failed by her family, by her husband, by the industry, by the people who were supposed to protect her. But ultimately, Whitney couldn't save herself. The demons were too strong, the pain too deep, the addiction too powerful. And on February 11th, 2012, the voice that once soared higher than anyone else's was silenced forever.